Hey everybody, how we doing? Hope you're good. Hope you've had a decent enough Monday. Anyway, welcome along, Paranormal Monkey Podcast again. And I think slightly different one. I think this evening it's going to be really, really interesting because although it's lovely to have people like academics on and experts in their field. This one is one obviously where we can chat to somebody who's had a very kind of personal experience, somebody who's quite skeptical actually in their beliefs and views of the paranormal. It's just that they've had some very unusual and odd occurrences in their family home. So I'll not dilly dally as I always do. I like to I would love to chat to you, but now is not the time. Hi William, how are we doing?
I'm very well, Justin. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Like I said, for a lot of I said before we came on air that a lot of the people who watch the podcast are quite open-minded, but quite skeptical in nature about the paranormal, and that's very much what you're like in terms of and how you've put yourself across in terms of your views on the paranormal, which is absolutely fine because that's pretty much everybody is like that. I've got to say,
Yeah.
But just wonder, I don't do this every time, and I apologize. I apologize to all my guests, but I'm going to put you on the spot. Just want to say a little bit about, before we start talking about your experiences, your home, your book, and everything else, just want to talk a little bit about yourself. Is that all right?
Yeah, I'm just glad that you didn't introduce me as an academic.
No.
That's good. No, that's fine. Yeah, we can crack on with that. It's fine.
You can go for it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
This isn't actually my real name, William C. Grave. I've written under a pseudonym, and in essence, I've lived in a house that is haunted for the past nearly 20 years. It's 20 years this December that I've been here since. I work in the motor trade as a senior used car consultant for quite a large car manufacturer, one of the world's biggest. And that's about me. I like a bit of fishing on the side. I've got a fishing pond that I lease. I like fishing. I like golfing. And I like watching my beloved Sheffield United. That's about me.
That'll do. We've got about 20 years of experiences to kind of unpick, and obviously, the Lady in the Bay Window has done extremely well. It's just flew basically. It's like so many people. I've already seen people in the chat have said, "Yeah, I've got your book. It's fantastic."
Yeah.
So, in terms of when you first moved to your property, was it one of those occasions where it was quite settled and quite happy, and then it kind of ramped up, or was it something where you had an immediate experience when you first moved in?
Well, it was a bit strange. It was kind of fate that I ended up with the house because I was only 19 at the time. I was quite a fresh face, not so much anymore. 19-year-old, quite lanky lad, and I was looking for a property on the south side of Sheffield with my fiance then at the time. I'd come into a bit of money because I was working in the car trade, and back then you could earn a pretty penny in car sales, which I was doing at the time.
Yeah.
And she kept pushing me and saying, "You need to put it into a house, put it into property." So I went out and started looking, and I actually bought a house just around the corner from here. So I'm actually in the house at the minute. I'm in my home at the minute. And it fell through about a week before we were supposed to move in. And I was devastated, lost all the fees and things at the time. Cost me a couple of £1,000 for nothing, basically.
Right.
And then the next day, my fiance phoned me while I was at work and said, "There's another property come on the market just around the corner from there. It's a 3-bed semi. There's nothing, well, there shouldn't be anything untoward about the house, but there's nothing strange about it. It's just a normal house, 3-bed semi, and it's on a nice road."
Yeah.
So I drove there on a Friday night, had a quick look, booked in for a viewing on the Saturday. We went to the house, the viewing went well, and we just thought we had to have the house. So it was kind of fate that we ended up with the house. But it's probably about a week or two before I moved into the property, I was going out on a work stew with a good friend of mine and work colleague called Craig. Now, he was picking me up in his souped-up Vauxhall Corsa. Bear in mind, this is pretty much 20 years ago. It was where everyone used to drive around in the Fast and Furious cars with the big exhausts and things.
Yeah.
And he drove to my mum and dad's, and he picked me up and said, "I've heard your bid's been accepted on the house and you're moving into." And I said, yeah, it's only around the corner. He said, "Oh, we'll go and have a look." And it was a dark December night because we were going out on a Christmas do. And as we drove up to the road, it's quite a steep road. And as we drove down the road, he's driving, I'm in the passenger seat, and he pulled up on the left-hand side of the road, pulled up onto the curb, and I said, "It's that one there." And he sort of bent down and looked across and pointed up at the house. And he sort of sat back into his seat and said, "Looks a lovely place, but who's the lady in the window, in the bay window?" And I've kind of looked at him, and I knew the house had been empty for 6 months. There's no curtains, no furniture in there. It was oak floorboards throughout. It was painted quite nice, but there's no carpet in there. Half the radiators were missing. But it was done up quite nice for somebody to move in and just do a couple of bits and you're ready to go. But I kind of looked at him and he looked back at me and said, "The old lady in the bay window. Who's the old lady in the bay window?" And I bent down and pointed at the house and looked back at him and said, "It's that one. It's number 333.
Yep.
It's not number 333, by the way. I've changed all the names to hide a few things in there, a bit of anonymity. But he pointed up at the house, and he was a car mechanic, so he sort of pointed his oil-stained finger up past my chest and said, "That one there?" And I said, "Yep." And he went, "Right. So who's the old lady in the bay window?" And I kind of shrugged it off at this point and just thought he was taking the mick.
Yeah.
I didn't think much of it. And we drove down the road, and I think I let it get the better of me, because at the time, as a 19-year-old, nothing ever paranormal had ever happened to me. I didn't have any reason to think that something was going to happen. And I just said, just out of interest then, what did this so-called old lady look like? And he said, well, she's probably in her 80s, grey permed hair. She had a dark cardigan over a white blouse, and she was stood with her arms sort of stretched out in the bay window upstairs, looking out with a real piercing stare, like she didn't want us outside the house.
Right.
And I still thought he was winding me up. Didn't think anything of it. Now, fast forward a couple of weeks, week and a half, I get the keys to my new house and I park up outside the house. I had a red Beetle Cabriolet at the time, believe it or not.
Nice.
Really manly car.
Very manly.
I parked up outside the house, keys jingling in my hand, and I walked up this steep path to the front door. And as I'm opening the door, I could hear a bit of commotion in the house. And there's supposed to be nobody in there. The estate agent had told me that the previous owner who'd been in, done it up to sell, would be out of the house by the time I got there. As I walked into the front room, I was greeted by a large, bald-headed, muscular bloke who sort of thrust his hand at me and said, "I'm Nick." And I kind of looked at him, gone out, and thought, who the hell is this in my new home? Never moved house before, didn't expect anyone to be there. And after a bit of conversation, he moved to one side, and this elderly lady walked towards me with sort of long dark hair. And after a bit of conversation, she leant in and whispered to me and just said, something wasn't right about this house. And I kind of looked at her, and before I had a chance to say anything, this big bald-headed guy said, "Mother, leave the lad alone." Like, it's his new house.
A warm Sheffield welcome.
Don't scare him. And again, I still didn't put two and two together, just thought nothing of it. Got on the phone to me, a few good friends of mine that I've not seen for a few months, and thought I'll invite them around to have a drink, because my fiance at the time said she wasn't moving in until we had furniture and carpets and bits and bobs in the house, but I wanted to have a drink. So I invited them round. There were 6 of us round. I took them for a grand tour around the 3-bed semi, which didn't last very long. And we got back into the front room. And if you can imagine, the front room just had a door from a hallway to go into the room. The old oak floorboards on the floor had sort of a big rectangle in the middle where somebody had varnished around a rug, I believe, in really dark, horrible varnish. Yeah. And then there was a massive bay window that sort of dominated the front side of the house. And then a bit of a cubby hole in the back of the wall where there's an old fireplace that had been bricked up as well next to it. And then just a door into the kitchen. And all 6 of us sat down on the floor. And I was a bit naive then and thought, I've not got a TV license. I'd better not switch my television on. So we were playing Monopoly. Sat down, having a few beers, playing Monopoly, all sat in a circle. And as we sat there, about 2 hours into the game and a few drinks in as well, a friend of mine, Greg, who I'd known since my early school days, was sat bang across from me, and I watched him look over his shoulder and then shriek out and sort of lunge towards me. He's a big lad as well. You wouldn't mess with him. I mean, I'm 6'4". He's nearly as tall as me, but built quite big. And he lunged towards me, sort of pushed me out of the way. And he beer bottles everywhere, glass smashed on the floor, game ruined, 2 hours of Monopoly, so everyone's upset. And he sat against the wall and grabbed his legs, and he was just sort of in a fetus position, scrambling to try and get some words out, and couldn't speak. And amidst all the conversation and people shouting at him and swearing at him for ruining things and beer everywhere, I managed to get him up off the floor and took him into the kitchen, and he just looked completely shocked, like all the blood had drained out of him. I said, what's happened? Tell me what's happened. He said, did you not see her? I was like, who? He said, the old lady sat in the front room. She was sat on nothing. And I was like, what do you mean? And I'm completely taken aback because I'm facing the direction he looked over his shoulder. So if he saw her when he looked over his shoulder, which I found out after that he did, I would have seen her. Like the time outside the house, I would have seen her because I'm looking at the same window, but I didn't see this old lady. And I just said to him, he didn't know Craig from my work. Greg was an old school friend. They didn't know each other. They didn't know the story about the lady in the bay window before. And I just said, just tell me what she looked like. What did this old lady look like? And he said, well, she was perched like she was sat on an invisible chair in the corner, in the sort of cubbyhole bit in the corner. And she had a grey perm. She was probably in her 70s, 80s, dark cardigan, white blouse, a long dark sort of dress skirt, and a real piercing stare. And the two descriptions were like to a T, exactly the same. And at that point, I kind of thought, first day in my new house, what the bloody hell's going on? And it took a few more beers for us all to settle in that night. We all actually slept in the front room that night. I don't know if that was nerves of what had just gone on, but that was my invite to my new home.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, it's like obviously when you're kind of faced with that, and like I say, prior to this, you had no real interest in the paranormal whatsoever, and like you mentioned before, you're quite skeptical. So,
yeah,
having had two different people basically say, near as damn it, identifying the same figure. I mean, obviously, was it, I suppose, solid enough for them to actually describe all of the details, the clothing, and everything else? It wasn't like
these were
your typical kind of ghost.
No, they didn't say
sighting.
Transparent or anything. These two sightings, weird you should say that, because there's actually been more than this now, but in the book there's 5 sightings of the old lady by 4 different people. All 4 people didn't know each other at the time. They only knew me and didn't know the stories of the house or anything like that.
Yeah.
But 2 of them did see her as translucent.
Okay.
And the other 3 saw her as a solid figure.
So in terms of being given that information,
yeah,
right. Where did you go from there? Did you dismiss it? Did you think, oh, he's a bit drunk, or is it just coincidence? I mean, in terms of how did you rationalize it in your head, being quite skeptically minded?
At the time, I kind of put 2 and 2 together a little bit, because it wasn't just that. It was the old lady who, when I walked into the house and she said something wasn't right about the house on the same day as well.
Yeah.
I kind of thought, is this what she means by something's not right about the house? Like, there's 2 people that I trust implicitly that have told me that they've seen an old lady, and they're not winding up because they don't know each other. So I kind of, that night, was a little bit anxious to go to sleep that night. But over the coming week, I actually bumped into the neighbour next door, who was an old bloke who since then's passed away, bless him. But he'd lived here since the house was new, and they were built on March the 25th, 1936. The houses were built on this section of the road. It's quite a nice area. Touch wood, I've never had any trouble from any outside interferences, but we've had a few things happen in the house. But I spoke with him, and he sort of peered over the fence at me, and I had a bit of a chat with him, bit of a chinwag. And I asked him at the time, and I thought I was being stupid asking him the question, and just said, has anyone ever said anything about anything being haunted in the house or anything like that? And he sort of laughed with me and said, well, if it was going to be haunted, it would be this lady. And I've changed her name as well, but he said Mrs. Tompkins. She loved the house. She'd lived there since when it was new. From what I know, she died when she had the house, and we were good friends, but she absolutely loved the house.
Yeah.
So he said if anyone was going to haunt it would be her, but he was kind of laughing about it, saying she's a nice lady.
And did you, obviously you talked about, I mean, we'll go into this a little bit more detail as well, but obviously this lady, did he kind of, obviously she's very house proud, and obviously she feels that it's her home. Did you get that kind of atmosphere, that feeling of, the feeling of being unwanted, or feeling you go into a room and feeling like something doesn't want you there?
There is quite an oppressive feeling sometimes when something's just happened or something's going to happen, whether that's psychological on my part, and this is me being a logical person again, and saying that I am quite a skeptic, but I know I've been here when I've seen door handles turn fully and doors open with nobody behind them, shadows go past the bottom of doors. I've seen that with other witnesses sat with me. Voices. I've heard voices in the house. We hear footsteps pretty much non-stop. Every couple of months, we'll have about a week of heavy footsteps throughout the house that if you investigate, they stop. So I know something's going on. Whether it's ghosts and ghouls and bits and bobs, I don't know. Is it something scientific we don't know about?
Obviously, during the book, obviously, just to clarify, obviously, the Lady in the Bay Window is the name of your book, and it's made up of 25 pretty short chapters of essentially, in chronological order, different events that have occurred to yourself, to your friends, to family, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Was there anything other than those initial sightings? Was there anything that, any of those events, those 25, that's particularly shocked you or surprised you or made you fearful of actually being in that house?
Yeah, I'd say there's two quite big ones that happened, that one of which is, and I've actually wrote in the book, I don't know if this is paranormal, I'll explain why. So by chance, I met a lady called Sadie, who invited to a poker night one. I used to run a poker night here on a Thursday night where there were about 12, 13 of us. I'd sit down and we'd battle it out to see who won a couple of quid. And I met her one night by breaking the golden rule of inviting a lady around to lads' night, we called it. It's my rules as well, so I broke my own rule. But she came round, had a good chat, and she was looking for a house in Sheffield. I said I'd rent her one of the rooms. I put on a big house party for on that Saturday night. So that was on the Thursday. On the Saturday night, put a big house party on for her. And I think it was her first or second night in the house. But the next morning, I'd let one of the lads stay. Bear in mind, there probably 24 people came round to the house party during the day, and they all went off in the droves in the taxis at 3, 4 in the morning. So it's a late one.
Yeah.
But one of the guys, who was sort of a friend of a friend, but was in the same sort of drinking circle, if you like, said, "Do you mind if I stop on the sofa?" And he's a nice kid, probably similar age to me at the time, mid-20s, mid to late 20s. And he said, "Do you mind if I stop on the sofa? I'm working tomorrow and I'm struggling to get a taxi." And I said, "Yeah, no problem, that's fine." And myself and Sadie went up to our respective rooms. And in the morning at 9 o'clock, I told him the keys were in the back of the door. I said, "So if he wants to leave before I get up, don't wake me. I'll probably have a bit of a hangover. Don't wake me up. Just leave." And I heard the door. I heard a black cab outside the house at 9 o'clock. And then I heard the door slam with the keys in the back of it. So I know the door had been shut. It by no means was locked because the keys were still in it. I heard the keys jangle in it. But I definitely heard him getting in a taxi at 9 o'clock in the morning. I went back to sleep. I woke up about 11 o'clock and I went downstairs. And as I got about halfway downstairs, I looked up and saw that the door had been left ajar. Now, I know it had been shut in the morning, but we're talking a 2-hour window here where I'd gone back to sleep.
Yeah.
So somebody could have opened that door. It's a Sunday. Like I said before, touch wood, nothing ever bad has happened, i.e. anybody, intruders, anything like that in the house, well, not living ones anyway. But the door was left ajar. So I got down to the bottom of the stairs fearing the worst, opened the door, and all Sadie's handbag and all its contents with keys and cigarettes and makeup and her phone, everything was on the floor outside with her bag next to it. And I ran back up and grabbed her and said, "I'm so sorry. My fault. I didn't lock the door. I think we've been robbed. Just come and make sure that all your stuff's here or whatever's missing." And she came down. I helped her pick it all up and everything was there. There was nothing missing. So we put it all into a bag. And at this point, I've seen my car's still there. That's still on the drive at this point. And I walked into the front room. And as I looked up across so as I walked through the doorway, I looked to the right. The other doorway goes to the kitchen. And across the bottom of the doorway in the oak floorboards that I'd painstakingly sanded down and re-varnished, there were 5 cooking knives. They were my cooking knives, but they were in size order going across the foot of the door. And they were wedged into the floor a good 2 inches. We're talking like sword in the stone sort of stuff, trying to get these things out of the floor. And I looked at her well, you can imagine the shock in that happening in the house. I kind of looked at her, gone out and said, "Wait here. I'll go and check around the rest of the house, make sure nobody's in the house." And I stepped over those, went in the kitchen. There were a couple of cupboard doors open. The knife drawer was open and the knife block on the side was the only thing that had something missing. And that's because the knife were in the floor. The rest of the house was all locked up. The windows were locked. The back door was locked. There's nobody in the house apart from me and Sadie. Now, the reason I put that, I don't know if this is paranormal or not, is because the door was unlocked for 2 hours. So being a logical person, somebody could have walked in the house and done that. I don't know who in the right mind would do that in somebody's house. on a Sunday morning, of all days. But I think one thing that somebody brought up with me on a podcast that I did a couple of months ago was these were 2 inches into the floor in an oak floorboard. And I said, yeah. And he said, do you think you could drive a knife 2 inches into a floor in an oak floorboard? And I went, probably not, without hurting myself. You'd probably need to hammer them in. You'd have to use some implement to hit them into the floor. So yeah, that was a bit scary. I didn't sleep very well for a couple of weeks after that.
And obviously, like, I mean, the one thing that kind of strikes me is, in terms of these things happening in your home, to what extent did you, skeptically try to investigate it? Did you try to replicate anything? Did you try to kind of essentially debunk what's gone on and how things have happened? And what did that look like for you? Because obviously it's very different when it's your own home, I know.
It is, yeah. And we've tried with the shadows under the doors, especially. We've tried replicating that in so many different ways and means, and it's so bloody hard to do without you actually standing there and being behind that door.
Yeah,
there's no other. It's not like cars driving past the house or anything daft like that. I've looked into it logically, and there's been other times where I've caught something on the baby monitor where I've made my wife go and stand in the room for like an hour. And you can imagine how that conversation went. And I'm like, just try this, do this, try that again, to try and replicate what's happened and can't seem to replicate it.
And has there been any kind of, like, I suppose you're in a very enviable position in that the fact that you own the property, then you can kind of either make notes of what may be happening over time. Have you seen any kind of trends at certain times of year, certain patterns, or is it very random things that have happened in your home?
It's really random, Justin. It sort of happens, I would say, every 2 to 3 months. We'll have 2 to 3 months of quiet and nothing happening. Quite a peaceful home. It's quite a peaceful area. It's not a busy road or anything like that. And then we call it the week of madness, where we'll have something starts that's quite little.
Yeah.
And it sort of builds up to something a little bit worse or stronger. I don't know what the right word is for that, but it kind of builds up over that week and then stops again for about 2 or 3 months.
How does that usually start? In a typical kind of case for you, is it just odd taps or noises, or is it movement of things, or
it's usually footsteps? We'll start to hear footsteps or this thudding. We hear like a thudding noise, like somebody banging a clenched fist on floorboards upstairs when you're downstairs. But if you go upstairs to investigate it, it stops, it goes.
Yeah.
The same with the footsteps. They happen upstairs. You'll hear somebody. We've actually seen the shadow go past the door at the bottom of the stairs. There were 4 of us in the room at the time, my brother included, who is a scary looking bloke. He's 6'3", 20 odd stone of muscle and tattoos. Not scared of anything, but he's scared of coming to my house. But he saw this shadow and sort of shouted to all of us, "What the hell is that?"
Yeah.
And we paused the television and heard heavy footsteps walk off upstairs. And I do live in a semi, and this is me being logical again. I live in a semi-detached house. If you live in a semi, you can often hear noises from next door. I mean, these are old houses, so the big thick brick walls, you don't hear a lot. But these are definite footsteps going up my staircase. And then to sort of pacify that, we've got a creaky floorboard at the top of the stairs, and you hear the footsteps go over the creaky floorboard, onto the tiled bathroom floor, through the door, opening the door handle, the creak of the door handle. And I've tried to replicate that whole thing. I wrote about this in the book. My brother sent me upstairs to go and investigate who was up there or what was up there.
Yeah.
And I was nervous doing that. As much as it is my house, you don't know what the bloody hell you're going to encounter when you get up there. So I've kind of sheepishly gone upstairs, gone around all the bedrooms before finally thinking, I've got to go in this bathroom. The door's shut, but I've got to go in and have a look what's in there.
Yeah.
And I've opened the door and there's nothing there.
So initially, obviously, these 2 sightings, of this old lady.
Yes.
From the sounds of what you're saying, it sounds like, obviously, talk about heavy footsteps. That's not the footsteps of an old lady. So definitely. In terms of other apparitions or other things that you think may be around your home,
yes.
Do you think it's children? Do you think it's a male presence? Do you think it's more than one? If so, how many things do you think may be going in and about your home?
I like you've just said, it's definitely not an old lady unless she was very, very heavy-footed and had large feet and quite heavy set. But by the sound of things, she was a furrier. She worked making expensive fur coats in her life, and she was quite a posh lady. That doesn't sound like her. But she did have a partner. And the strange thing is, it wasn't a husband. She had a partner for many years who did actually die in the house.
Yeah.
And we know that he died in the house back in the 70s. So it could potentially be him. And the reason why I say that is I booked the last 2 chapters of the book. I booked a medium to come to the house, who's a guy called Tim Doyle, who's the head of a local spiritualist church and quite well renowned as a medium. I booked him to come round. Didn't tell him my name, didn't tell him the address, because I'm quite skeptical, especially about stuff like this. And he came to the house. I directed him in by phone once he'd got onto my road.
Yep.
So I knew that he couldn't research anything before he came in the house. He did a full walk round, and he was really good, to be fair. It's quite interesting to listen to some of the stuff that he came out with, because there were things that he even said that I haven't put in the book that he said about me that I just don't think he could have known, which were a bit weird. And he said, "You're quite a skeptic. You don't believe in any of this, do you?" And I was like, prove me wrong, sort of thing. But yeah, he said that there was a lady spirit here, and she's got a partner, and it's not a husband, which is strange for that era. She's got a partner, and he's looking for her. He can't find her in the house. We also had a paranormal investigation crew in for a night. Same thing again. Didn't know my name or the address or anything. And they're called Awakening the Paranormal. I don't know if you've seen.
Okay. I don't know them, to be honest.
Yeah, they came in, brought loads of gadgets and gizmos. Very interesting night. But he walked away saying the same sort of things to me. He said, "I think you've got an old lady here, and I think you've got a partner," from what kept coming through on this voice app. That it's a partner, not a husband. It's a partner. And I didn't tell him anything. I offered to tell him stuff when he got here. I said, "Do you want me to tell you anything about the property, anything?" He said, "Nope, no, we're going to investigate it. We'll tell you at the end of the night." But yeah, he had all these different devices and bits and bobs going off all night, which was, for somebody like me who's not a massive believer in that sort of stuff, it took a lot of convincing to, yeah.
And how much digging have you actually done? I mean, either into the property. You mentioned how when it was built, but have you done any research into the land? And obviously, you know the name of this person you believe you've seen the ghost, or that your friends have seen the ghost of.
Yeah.
So, have you gone any further in terms of either about her life, her partner's life, or basically either the land or the property itself?
Well, the only research that I've been able to do is speaking to neighbours around here, because the house isn't 100 years old yet. There's nothing available. You can't really get anything on it. The only reason I got the date of the house is on my home deeds. It's on the original deeds that I've got. So, and I know that she lived here from when it was new, from the old neighbour that lived next door, because he moved in on the same day as her. But he's since passed. What was quite interesting was about a month ago. So the book's been out since October last year. And I told you before the podcast, I was a bit nervous about putting the book out there, because we're working quite a professional job, and I was slightly concerned about putting it out there, putting my thoughts and feelings on paper and letting everyone read it. But this guy contacted me via the Facebook page for the lady in the bay window and said, "Just to let you know, I've just by chance read your book, not massively into paranormal or anything like that, but I've picked up the book. It was about Sheffield. I've read it, and I knew straight away who this house was about and whose house it was, because my mom was best friends with Mrs. Tompkins, and we lived across the road."
Yeah.
So he lived there when he was in his 40s, and a week after her funeral, which he went to, he saw her in that bay window. Now, this is a guy that I don't know. He's come forward to me and said, I've read your book. I know that you've had 2 sightings in that bay window. I can remember seeing her in that bay window and telling my mom about it, that I've just seen her friend in the window looking out as if she's looking across the road to our house, which was a little bit weird, to be fair, to hear. But there's a few other people that have come forward with sightings from neighbours and friends of neighbours and things that have come forward since reading the book.
And since then, and obviously you've like I said, had 20 years in this home. Have you seen anything that you would regard as you've seen a glimpse of or something, or you've seen an apparition, or would it's always been like other people that have seen it, not yourself?
Me personally, I've been there on 3 of the occasions where the old lady's been seen. and I've been looking in the same direction as them and not seen her. The other 2 times I wasn't there. I haven't seen this full body apparition of this old lady, but I 100% have seen door handles move. I've had a coin thrown at me while I've been in the shower, an American coin, which was very, very random. You can come back to that in a minute if you like.
Go. Yeah.
And I've seen the door handles move down and open the door with nobody on the other side of it, no windows open, no drafts, anything like that. So I've seen things, I've heard things, but I've not seen a full apparition of a ghost. I would actually like to see it.
Is the audible stuff the most common, or is it the movement of like the door handles that you see most often, or in terms of seeing things, is that the most
common? Yeah, the footsteps by far is the most common.
And there'll be skeptics. I know, because there's a whole bunch of skeptics in this chat. They'll be going, people mistake floorboards for footsteps all the time, expanding and contracting floorboards. When you turn the heating off, it sounds like there are footsteps going up the stairs, so on and so on and so on. So have you tried to kind of basically, because and I keep on going back to it, but I think it's really, really important that you have this perfect opportunity owning this home and being able to debunk as much as you like for as long as you like. Have you, in terms of, have you gone around trying to replicate things, or over time trying things with the heating, turning it on, turning it off, and when things cool down on summer evenings, all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I've even had a plumber and an electrician in to debunk the thudding noises that we had, because they were crazy, and we've not had those for probably going on a year now. But it was during COVID that it started, so it was only a couple of years back, and it was literally like somebody hammering a fist down onto floorboards. Upstairs is all carpeted in the house, downstairs is tiled, and we'd always hear it when we were downstairs. Now, it came in 1s, 2s, or 3s, and they'd ring out throughout the house. You'd hear them above the television downstairs, and it was like, pause the TV, it's happening again. And it was the first time I tried to communicate with said whatever it is in the house, because somebody had said to me, a friend of mine who's massively into paranormal, said, you need to ask it a question. It's a spirit trying to get in contact with you. Ask a question. 2 FUDs for this, 1 for no. And I thought, next time it happens, I'll do it. So I got my camera phone out and video record, but sat next to my wife while we were having a glass of wine on I think it was a Friday night, and just said, go on then, if there's any spirits in the house other than myself and my wife sat here, if there's anybody else in the house, any spirits. Now, bear in mind, at this point, my neighbour had moved to Cornwall. Her family live in Cornwall, so the semi-detached house attached to me was empty. This was the middle of the summer. There's no windows open. Middle of the winter. There's no windows open, and we're sat there peaceful as anything. You could hear a pin drop, and this thudding sound stopped for about 5 minutes. So I asked out, and we heard 2 massive FUDs respond to what I asked. And as soon as it did, my wife went ballistic and said, do not ask anything else. She hates it. She hates all the stuff that happened in the house. But yeah, with regard to replicating things or trying to find out what it is, when we had the paranormal investigation team in, after that, I had the electrician and the plumber in. They came in, and every time they went upstairs to check what it was, it stopped. And then they come back down and say, you must be doing this. I was like, nope. It's not me doing it. I said, go and find out what it. I want you to tell me what it is, and they couldn't tell me what it was. And getting a plumber and electrician to come to your house during COVID, by the way, was a nightmare. But they both came in and both checked it out and said, "There's something weird going on in your house."
And the other thing, because I've had this as well, because I remember I mentioned to you, but I had some strange things happening in my home in the Peak District over COVID, and straight away people going, set up CCTV, set up. Cover your house in CCTV and try and capture it. And I know. I mean, you could. I mean, in terms of how have you tried to record video evidence of this, and if so, how have you done it?
Yeah. So I bought a night vision camera, and I've tried to capture this shadow under the door at the bottom of the stairs and been unsuccessful on. I've probably only tried it about 10 times, because you obviously have to produce all this side of things. Doing the production side and looking back through 2 hours of footage to see if a shadow goes under a door. I'm quite a busy bloke. I work a full-time job. I've got a 1-year-old son. I don't have time to sit around for 2 hours and watch a door on a video and look for a shadow going under it. I have done, and I've done it plenty of times, but I've not caught anything on that, apart from a voice that I heard back on one of them. which was weird, which said very clearly, and I phoned my dad to say, come round, have a listen to this. I'm not going to tell you what I think it says, but listen to this, tell me what it says. And it says quite clearly, be quiet, like a whispered, be quiet, into the microphone of the camera. So that's the only thing I've caught on that. However, on the night that the paranormal investigation team were here, I didn't tell them that I'd set up a laptop at the top of the stairs. This laptop that I'm on now didn't have a mic for it or anything, so it was just working off the internal mic of the laptop. But I set up Audacity just to record and see if I could get anything from upstairs while we were downstairs. And you quite clearly, we had footsteps, which you hear walking past the laptop and then walking back past the laptop. We heard a bloke coughing on it. Now, it sounds crazy saying this sort of stuff. I know it does, but I've got the recordings of it. And
to be honest, nothing you say will surprise me. Genuinely.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry for those that are bored of my East Drive ranting, but I've had exactly the same at 30 East Drive. I've heard children, I've heard women, and I've heard men on EVP recordings within East Drive. So it does happen. So I genuinely do get it, you know.
Well, we also, while we were downstairs, like investigating downstairs in the extension in the kitchen as well, so we're sort of out of the house, if you like, in the extension, we heard a door slam upstairs. There was nobody in the house. All windows, doors, and everything shut upstairs. So there wasn't even a door open upstairs. But later on, when I got the recording, after you hear the footsteps and the cough, you then hear a door slam within vicinity of quite close to the mic. So that was quite damning evidence for me. And later on that night, after they'd left, I'd left it recording and not told them it was recording again upstairs. And nothing happened. I was listening back to it for about 28 minutes, sat in the house on my own. And then right at the end, I saw some sort of sound waves coming up on the screen and thought, what's this? And heard like a woman humming, like a melody, and then something thrown at a wall. It sounded like a TV remote being thrown at a wall. There's nobody upstairs, and there's nothing on the floor. So I went straight upstairs to have a look and looked around on the floor. There's nothing on the floor, but it sounded like somebody had thrown a TV remote with batteries or something in it at a wall quite hard, and it sort of bounced off the floor. But that was all caught on the recordings.
And
so, very creepy.
And the other thing I'd find really interesting, again, for those that haven't had the experience of living somewhere where weird shit happens, the fact that you own this place, have you normalized this stuff in terms of, or does it still freak you out, or do you just not think about it anymore?
It's kind of normalized, yes. Don't get me wrong. I told you just before we came on this podcast, something had happened last night, which I'll not go into detail about, but I'll put it on the Facebook page. I wanted people's thoughts on it. But when I say there's quite an oppressive feeling sometimes when something happens, whether this is psychological or not, I woke up at sort of, I think it was nearly 4 o'clock in the morning last night because my son was whimpering in his bedroom. He normally sleeps through till 7 o'clock. And as I've gone through and picked him up out of the bed, I kind of felt like a shiver going down your back, like somebody else is in there with you. It was a bit weird. And I sort of took him into our room. And then 2 minutes later, the motion detector is going off in the room when nobody's in there on the baby monitor, which is just a tad weird. But I kind of have normalized. My wife, not so much. She hates the fact that I think if we could move tomorrow, she probably would.
Right.
But we've spent 3 years renovating all the house and putting an extension on there. So I think financially, I think I'm stuck here for a while anyway, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I love the house. I love the house. And there's only been a few things that have happened that have scared me. But a couple of months, probably about a month back now, I heard the footsteps in the middle of the night, heard the footsteps, got up out of bed, went downstairs. The inevitable happened. As soon as I got halfway down the stairs, the footsteps stopped. They were in the front room. I could hear them bang underneath our bedroom floor. And I went back upstairs. And when I got back up there, my wife had put my 1-year-old son in bed, and he was sort of laid diagonally across, and I couldn't get back into my bed. So I went and got in the spare room, which is the room I'm in now, my office as well. And I was just putting my headset in to listen to a podcast. It might have actually been your podcast. I was having to listen to a few podcasts. And I put my headset in to listen to a podcast, and I heard the shower come on. Now, my first thoughts as a logical person was my son's had a bit of a nightmare in the middle of the night and wet himself or whatever. He seeped through his nappy or whatever it might be. So I jumped up out of bed. I walked out the door to my right here, and the door to the bathroom is the first door on your left. So my wife would have kind of had to come past me to get to the bathroom anyway. But as I walked into the bathroom, the shower stopped. And it's not an electric shower. It's a turn handle. It's quite a stiff turn handle as well. It's a nice bathroom, but it's a stiff turn handle to turn the shower on. And it's a big rain shower.
Yeah.
And I thought at first, I'm going mad. I 100% heard the rain shower on because it's quite a loud noise. And then when I looked down, I could see the water running off into the plug hole. So I knew it had been on. I'm not going mad. And I went and got back in bed and struggled to get back to sleep for an hour or so, because I thought, when you say about wanting to move out, I kind of thought, if it can do something like that, it can flood the house, which we've actually had happen a few years ago. The house, a burst water main upstairs, flooded the whole house. So that freaked me a little bit.
Yeah, I bet. Before we get into people's questions, because I know that, and also if you are watching this at home and you start, I'm quite sure as you've been listening to William and kind of relating some of these things, because there's so much to this story. And like I say, the book, there's, like I say, 25 chapters of different instance occurrences and things that have happened to friends and family and to William himself. We have to mention the fact that this book has done really well. And the profits of the back book you've done, very kindly, you could have kept them for yourself, but you've actually donated an awful lot of these. I don't know for all the profits, but to Cavendish Cancer Care. So, and I put it in the description, but was it over 30 grand at the minute you've been able to raise?
Every single penny from every single book or audiobook sales gone directly to them. It's about 33 grand now it's at.
That's amazing.
So it's done fantastic. It's been overwhelming, the support the book's got. It's amazing. So thank you to everyone who has bought it.
Yeah, and like I said, anybody who basically wants to do their bit towards it, obviously it's called The Lady in the Bay Window. In the description after this, I've put a link to it on Amazon as well for those interested. You've done. Is it audio? You've done the audio book for it as well.
I've done the audio book. So if you've not enjoyed listening to me now, then don't buy that one. But if you have, then have a listen. It might it'll either send you to sleep or you'll not sleep, one or the other. So,
but yeah, just hats off to you. My dad passed away from cancer. I know it's shit, properly shit. And obviously, do you want to say a little bit about why you decided to devote all this money to cancer charity?
So it's about 6 years ago now, my mum was diagnosed with a very rare form of breast cancer. And for the first 2 years, I think trying to get my head around it was trying to help out as best I could. So I started doing sponsored dog walks, raised about 3 grand for Cancer Research UK. And then I knackered my knee and I had to have an operation on my knee. So I was a bit distraught, thought I couldn't do anything to help. And a good friend of mine came round, and he used to live here, he used to rent a room here. And he kind of talk me through what's been happening that's a bit weird then lately. And at this point, I'm laid with a brace on my leg, recovering from the operation. And I said, actually, something weird happened last week. And this was the coin story. So in essence, I'd found a 1 cent American piece on my bedroom floor on a Friday night when I went to bed. And I looked at my wife in bed and said, what's this about? Have you put this here? Where's it come from? I've been to America before, but not got any coins in there. It's a pretty cashless society, isn't it? So no coins in my room or anything. But I just put it in my bedside table, didn't think much of it. Saturday, the day after, I went up to bed, same spot on the floor, picked up a 1 cent American piece, same date on it. For some reason, I looked at the date on it. Logical person, 2014, same date, looked in my top drawer, no other coins in there. That coin's gone. I assume it must be the same coin. On the Sunday, I went to go to bed. My wife had gone to bed about an hour before me. I'd hoovered all the house because I thought, I'm leaving nothing to chance. There's nothing on the floor. I know there's nothing on the floor. And I went up to bed, and halfway up the stairs, this American 1 cent piece was there. So I picked it up, same date, checked my drawer, not in my drawer, woke my wife up, second night on the bounce, not a good thing to do, and said, you've got to be winding him up. You must have put that there. And she said, well, she's not that kind of person, to be fair. Like I said, this sort of stuff freaks her out. She wouldn't do something like that. But she said, just give it here. Can't believe you woke me up about this bloody coin again. Give it here. And she put it on her bedside table, which is in the bay window where the lady's been seen a few times. So, yeah, I let her sleep on that side. So I watched her do that. And on the Monday morning, I woke up. I went and got my towel. I went and got in the shower. And I'm stood in the shower alone. The door's shut, but it's got a glass sort of bit to the side, a bit glass partition, so I can see what's going on in the room. There's nobody in there with me. And I'm thinking about this coin when I heard a slap and then something metallic hit the bath floor, and I knew what it was going to be before I even looked down. And I bent down and picked it up, and it was this 2014 American 1-cent coin. It gets a little bit weirder.
Go on.
So I brought it out of the bedroom. I put it on my bedside table, took a photo of it, thought I don't want it to move. And a couple of hours later, after a couple of meetings working from home, my dad phoned and said, I phoned my dad and said, let me just tell you what's happened over this weekend. And he said, well, where's the coin now? I said, it's upstairs on my bedside table. So I went up to have a look, and as I pulled it off the side, like in the palm of my hand, while I've got the phone to my ear, I rolled it into my hand, and there were 2 American 1-cent coins, a 2014 and a 2012. Now, I know there was only one there when I put it on that side. So that was kind of like amazing. So I'm fast forward a week later, I'm telling my mate this story. I'm laid with my leg, a bit distraught. I can't do anything else to help the charity. My mate's asking me what's weird happened. I've just told him that story. And he was going whiter and whiter. And bear in mind, he used to live here for about 4 years. He rented a room here. And he said, do you know what's really weird? I said, go on. He went, when was I working at yours last? And he was doing a job on the electrics on the front of the house. He was putting some lights in for me. And I said, I think you were around last Sunday doing the first fix, the day before the coin got thrown at me in the shower. And he said, I thought I was. He said, I went home, and when I got home, so I took my work trousers off, my Snickers trousers. There was one thing in the pocket before I put it in the washing machine. It's an American 1-cent piece. And I kind of looked at him and went, you're joking? He went, no. So I've got these 3 coins now. And after that, my other mate, who was sat in the front room at the time having a beer, sort of looked at me and said, you should write about this stuff, because I'd buy it, I'd read it. And I just had a bit of a light bulb moment and thought, you know what, if I did this, I could do it and just chuck all the money to this cancer charity that's helped my mom.
Yeah.
Bless her, she didn't get to read the final edit because she passed away a year last May, bless her. But she picked the cancer charity, and every single penny's gone to them. So,
fantastic. I mean, it's just to applaud you for that. I mean, that's a huge amount being raised. You know, it's just massive. And like I say, and there's so many people in the chat that have, and it's a kind of old cliche, I suppose, but so many people have been touched by cancer, you know, and having parents or loved ones who have been afflicted, or they've had it themselves and got through it. It's just the worst. It really is. So just, you know, for the people who have got it and been through it and know exactly what it's like to see a parent with it, it's rough, you know. So absolutely, just applaud you for it. Right. Okay. So, and like I say, we've got time now for anybody who's watching, and like I say, if they might. Obviously, because I know what these people are like who are watching. They're like, yeah, pull the other one, William. All right, whatever. Right. In terms of it just sounds a bit too good to be true. Now is your time at home to put your own questions to William, and just as long as you're open to kind of people's questions and things. So
mate, honestly, I've got nothing to hide with it. Just fire away. So yeah, any questions I'm happy to. I could see one there. Was the partner
was the partner an ex-serviceman?
We don't know. Is the honest answer to that. I can't find any detail on him. The neighbour at the time didn't know his name. He died back in the 70s, couldn't remember his name, and he didn't have the same surname as the lady because they weren't married either. So I can't find anything on them. I'm hoping when the house gets to 100 years old, which is not a million miles away, we're talking another 12 years, I can find out a bit more information about that sort of stuff.
And Spange is saying, look, love the book. As events continue, will you be writing a second one?
I think so, yeah. Bear in mind, the first book's based on 18 years of me living in this house. So there's no way I'm going to have enough content for a second book. So I might be able to do like a half a book of an update of what's happened over the last sort of 2 years, sorry.
Yeah.
I might be able to do a bit of an update. And then I'm thinking about writing about other people's haunted homes around this area. So
okay, cool.
I might be in touch with you, Justin, about your
yeah, fair enough. Let's do it. Beardo saying, have you been tempted to rig up CCTV to attempt to catch something, not for a YouTube or anything, but for your own proof?
Yes. Yeah. And to be fair, I've got a baby monitor on every night now that's got motion detection on it, which is hopefully looking after my child while he sleeps because he's only 16 months old. But we've caught a few things on that which have been a little bit weird, shall we say. But if you want to check them out, they're on the Facebook channel. If you want to search for the lady in the bay window, you can have a look at those, see what you think. I'm not a massive fan of orbs and things, but I have caught a few bits like that, and I wanted to get people's thoughts. So don't laugh when you look at those.
I know your child's, pretty young, but that Chris is saying, I'd like to know if your child has seen spirits or is seeing the spirits. Have you got any kind of thoughts around that?
I don't know yet. He's literally just getting to that stage where he's starting to mouth the odd word and things. So he's very young, like I say. But yeah, I am slightly concerned about him coming of age and saying that he's just seen an old lady in his bedroom or something. That's a scary concept. But I've got a stepson who's 19, who's just gone to uni last year, and he's involved in one of the chapters in the book. So I'll let you read about that. But I never told him about any of the hauntings of the house until he left the house.
You'll realise that Brian's great with the questions, so he'll be flooding you with questions on this one. So it says supernatural books bring a lot of profit and sometimes movies. Does that affect credibility? What do you reckon?
Potentially, yeah, depending on how it's done. So Blumhouse, who did the latest Halloween film last year, got in contact with me about making this into buying the TV and film rights for mine. And one of their first things that he said to me was, would you mind us being creative with it? And I was like, well, to be fair, people like it because of how it is. It's just me telling a story. This is what's happened. This is how I felt about it. That's kind of how the book reads out. So, yes, I kind of get where you're coming from. You could even say like the Annabelle doll and things like that. If you look at the Annabelle doll in the movies compared to what that looks like in real life, it looks quite a cuddly teddy bear, doesn't it? So, yeah, it could do.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes a sideshow if you're not careful. That's the thing.
Exactly.
So Spookfest is very quick one. If you found out, is your house built on a graveyard?
No, it's old farmland. So I did look into all the ley lines and the OS maps and all that sort of stuff because you can get that information. So I have looked. There is a bit of other than it just being farmland here, there is a bit of a stream that runs behind the houses on the opposite side of the road. But other than that, there's nothing of any significance.
Just a very quick one, Brian. We don't have raccoons in the UK. Man. Come on, it's really simple. Anyway, although he does say a lot of movie themes are in your story, like the old woman with the warning. Can you kind of explain? Basically, I think he's very skeptical. Is Brian?
No, you're all right, Brian. I can't explain it. Literally, I've just written down what's happened, and to be fair, I've not listed everything that's happened because I think it'd be quite boring to read. We heard these footsteps this night. We heard these footsteps that night. So there's only like one story of footsteps in the book. But anything significant like the 5 sightings by 4 different people, like the knives in the floor. There's a bit about a sofa lifting up when there were 6 people in the room. There's stories in there that I say them out loud now, and as they come out my mouth, I kind of think it sounds unbelievable. And I get it. I'm a skeptical person, but I've been there when these things have happened.
Gareth just basically said, you've been in the house for 18 years. How come you didn't basically write the book earlier?
To be fair, I'm a busy man. I used to work about 70 hours a week in my previous job. I now work Monday to Friday, but I now have a 1-year-old, so I'm kind of working 7 days a week. This is actually bliss for me to have an hour off at this time while he's been showered and bathed and put to bed, to be fair. So I've kind of got the night off doing this with you guys.
Nice.
But that's the reason I did it, was for this cancer charity and to sort of help myself through my mum's cancer.
Yeah, that's lovely. I mean, you kind of touched on this, but it's saying it bumps into the things in the night saying, are you worried about bringing up your child in the house?
I have been asked this a couple of times, and at the minute, because nothing's happened to him, and there's only, like I say, there's only probably 2 things that have happened in the house that have scared me that I think could be quite threatening. And I don't think they were aimed at me. I think they were aimed at other people. If they were paranormal things, I think they were aimed at other people, not me. So not massively, no.
Okay, good. Gareth saying, is the house up Crystal Peaks area of Sheffield?
It's about 5-10 minutes drive from there. It's at Gleadless End. I don't mind telling you where it is. I can't tell you exactly where it is because, like you've just said, it would turn into a circus because there's about 8,000 books sold now. So it could turn very quickly into a circus.
Brian just saying, have you done any library research on any deaths over the last few decades or centuries?
Yeah, so the only deaths that we know the lady owned this house when she passed away, but she passed away in old age. It wasn't anything dramatic. The chap died of, we believe, a heart attack back in the 70s, her partner. One of the other strange things that did come up when, and I don't know if I believe in these voice apps, but the paranormal investigation team were using one of these voice apps.
Oh God, don't go there. Don't go there. There'll be a lot of people kind of throwing stones at you.
That's all right. Well, they were saying there's a lady coming through saying that there's somebody doing a tram stop. Now there's a tram stop literally 150 yards behind my house. And it kept saying she was visiting and that sort of stuff. And I've written this in the book. I'm a massive skeptic about these sorts of things. But there is a tram stop about 150 yards behind the house, and somebody did die there.
Phil's asking, was there any mention of this gentleman that might have been in the census records?
Potentially. That's a good point, actually. I might be able to get some information on him through census. But I don't know any detail of him. I don't know if I'll be able to find that through address. Would I be able to find that through address?
I'm trying to think. You can search by address. I'm trying to think. I think the latest one I think you can search though is 1921. I think that's the latest one you can look through, which might be a bit too early. It depends how long she was with this guy for and what kind of era.
Yeah, I know he passed in the 70s, and he was, I think he was in his 50s, maybe 60s. We think.
Yeah. Outside chance, then maybe. But he might have been around.
Yeah, could have a look into it.
Brian saying, any chance that the knives at the door was a prank when they saw your door open?
That's kind of what I was saying. I haven't got friends, by the way, that would. The oak floorboards were the original oak floorboards in the house, and I don't have any mates that would, I think, dare to come into my house and do something like that. So, yes, it could be somebody messing about. But if they were, it was quite a threatening messing about, I think, putting 5 knives into somebody's floorboards. But yeah, potentially, yeah. Could be.
Mr. Skeptical himself, Chief Skeptic. Are the stories based entirely on personal anecdotes, or are there science-based investigative results included? And he's saying ghost hunting groups don't count.
In what respect? In what respect, scientific side of things? What?
Oh, don't ask Kenny this. He will tell you. he'll contact you privately. I tell you now.
Literally, I think the thing that people like about the book, there's only probably 4 stories that are about me personally. The rest are about family and friends who I've had to interview about what happened to them. So yeah, that's the majority are stories that are true stories. All of them are true to the word of the person that's told the story, including myself for mine as well in there.
Do one from my brother. Hi, Brett, for watching. Didn't know he was watching, Brett. He's saying, have you any pets? If so, have they reacted?
I do. I have 2 dogs. Now, my dogs are quite daft, but my dad's dog that I used to look after, there's a story about her, which I'm not going to now, but that was the night that really creeped me out, and she was involved in that one. A border collie called Guinness, who was like the cleverest dog that I've ever seen. So please, if you do read the book, read that one. That was the one that really... Talking about that one sends shivers up my arms because it did freak me out.
Can I just say, just a big thank you to Kaza for the 5 memberships. Thank you so much, Kaza. It, like I say, everything helps with this channel, so thank you so much. Thank you. Brian, I told you, Brian, these bloody questions. Then, do you have trees over the house that could potentially drop seeds onto the roof? Might cause these kind of little knocking noises.
Nope. The closest trees are about, how big's my garden? 10 meters that away after the house, after the extension on the house. So yeah, there are trees at the end of the garden, but not that would blow anywhere near the house. No.
I think I used the word. Somebody used the word daft, and it's like, what does daft mean?
For me,
like, I don't know whether it's you or me or so. It could have been either one of us, to be honest.
Idiotic is a daft, meaning of daft, I think.
Right, because we've just gone over the hour. I mean, like I say, if there's any last questions, by all means, whack them in. But just want to, obviously, we want to plug this book as much as possible. We want to try and get more money to the cancer charity. I think would be a good thing. Like I said, I've put in the description. Like I say, you've recently done the audio book, so you can get it on Kindle. You can get it. You can do paperback, hardback. It's everywhere.
It's on Audible, Kindle Unlimited, paperback, hardback. You can get it on Amazon. It's probably the best place to look for it. Don't buy it off eBay unless you haven't got an Amazon account, because that's not me selling it. It's other people are selling it for more than what I'm selling it for somehow. But yeah, every penny from every book sale goes directly to Cavendish Cancer Care, who are a phenomenal local cancer charity that looked after my mum for a number of years.
Fantastic. I think we will. I mean, there's lots of people saying, "Yeah, I'm definitely going to get it," or they've already had it as well. I mean, certain people can be very skeptical of ghost stories, and in terms of your, I think even Kenny Biddle was saying you seem pretty sincere in terms of what you're saying.
I've got nothing to lie about it for. I don't want any fame or fortune from it, and that's not my actual name, like I say. So yeah. That's it.
I'll do one last little question, John Boy, and then I think we'll probably wrap up on this. It's just, I think it's quite an interesting one. Have the neighbours experienced anything? Is it something that's happening in the area, or do you think it's very much related to your particular property?
Not in their properties, but a few people have come forward since the book's been released and said that they have seen the old lady since she's passed. And these are previous residents that have lived on the house that knew her. And they saw her in this property from outside, viewing from outside the house. And there's two people that have come forward and said that since they've read the book. And they knew straight away. Bear in mind, there's no address in there at all to say where the house is. The names are all changed in it, but they knew straight away and contacted me and said, "This is Mrs. Such and Such. It's this number on this road." I was like, yeah, it is.
Kaz has just asked, does the audio purchases also go to the cancer charity?
It does. Yeah, everything from book, audiobook, the book, everything. It all goes straight to the cancer charity. And like I say, it's probably about £33,000 it's raised so far, which actually pays for their full lease for the year and all their utility bills, everything. So it's done a cracking job.
That's fantastic. And Beardo's just a fantastic comment, which I heartily agree with. Saying, it's not a question. I just want to thank William for selflessly giving the money to cancer. It was a worthy purchase. Great read and a great cause. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much. Absolutely. I love your content as well. I watch a bit of your stuff, Beardo. So thank you.
Absolutely. And just a huge thank you for me for agreeing to come on. And obviously, I mean, anybody obviously you've been piqued by William's account of the house and things, get the book, just get it and have a good read of it. And you're doing your bit as well as showing your interest in the paranormal. I think it's all a good thing.
Yeah, it is. And if anyone has got any other burning questions that they want to ask, feel free. I've got a Facebook account for it that's just called The Lady in the Bay Window, William C. Grave. Get in contact with me. I'll be posting this video on there afterwards as well to hopefully support Justin a bit. And
bless you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And like I say, just thank you for coming on. It's been, I've been absorbed by it. I know lots of people have been just fascinated by it. You've had so many lovely comments as well in terms of those who have read the book, and it's going from strength to strength. So it's been, I've just loved it this evening. And whether you're, if you're a diehard skeptic, you may still be like, but I think you've raised enough questions for people to actually go, well, actually, that's odd. In terms of the knife thing's odd, the coin thing's odd. The fact that there's separate accounts describing the same appearance of the woman in the bay window as well is odd. It's not just coming from you. It's not just on your say so. That's I think that's really important as well.
I've not seen her. I've not seen her yet. I say.
Right. Thank you for. I'll just say goodbye now. I'll just say a quick word to everybody at home if that's all right. But I'll have a quick word afterwards.
Thank you very much for having me. Just appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Phew, I loved it. Love that. I think I just found that really, really fascinating. Just very, very quickly before I disappear, next week I've got Dr. Callum Cooper, and there was a very old book, in I think 1950s, quite a famous book called Phone Calls from the Dead. If you haven't realized, Dr. Callum Cooper has written and updated a basically version of that called Telephone Calls from the Dead. It's going to be a really interesting conversation. Anyway, that is next week. There's for those who watch the Chips Tea Party thing on Thursday. Thank you very much for coming and watching that. There'll be nothing this Thursday, but I'll do it the following Thursday. All right, after Dr. Callum Cooper on the Monday. So until then, I hope you have a great evening. Enjoy the rest of your week, and just thank you very much for joining us. And I'll say goodnight. All right, guys. Thanks.